have scallions, otherwise known as green onions. Depending on what part of the English-speaking world you're in, you probably have different names if you come from a different food tradition. But the thing to know is that, you know, the whole thing is edible. Other than you probably don't want the root end or the very end that starts to get a little brown or sad looking at the very tip of the green. But otherwise, the white and the green and the in-between are edible. And it's interesting because the culinary school that I trained in, we would actually just use the green. I've spoken with other people who trained at other institutions where they just use the white. So I think that's just proof that you should use the whole thing. What you really want to look for when you buy these is something that's a little bit more crisp and fresh than what I have here, but this is still usable. As long as it's not brown and soggy and mushy, you know, you can get by. But if it's, you know, nice and crisp and, you know, is able to stick out straight when you hold it up, that's going to be most ideal. You should even be able to, you know, pull off part of it and see a nice circle at the end. And this is just getting a little bit past where we want it to be. But let me still go ahead and show you how to slice it and do a couple neat tricks that you might find are fun for dressing up some of the dishes that you make at home. All right, so the first thing I'll do is just show you how to slice it. I'm going to cut off these dried out ends, cut off the roots, and we'll slice the rest. Sometimes there's little, you know, like little pieces that just pull off that aren't really, you know, part of the rest of the onion. They're, you know, just kind of looking a little sad. You can pull those off as well. If you pull back some of the leaves and you notice that there's some dirt in there, you might want to pull some of those outer leaves back and just rinse that out a little bit. These are pretty clean. If you have something bigger that's, you know, similar in shape and structure, but a lot bigger, like leeks, you know, maybe other, you know, you're using the tops of different types of onions, then there's usually a lot of dirt in there, so you want to do a better job rinsing. So I'm going to curl my fingers under, and first, again, we'll just slice. So just gonna make some beautiful white rounds. Be prepared for things to roll off your cutting board. That's just what happens. And because you might add these at different points in cooking or use them for different things, you know, you might want to keep the white and the light green off to the side, and then, you know, oftentimes you'll use the darker green part raw or, you know, not cooked so much. So you can keep them separate if you want. If you're going to use them all the same way, then mix them together by all means. So I'll usually cut the white and light green parts smaller. If you want, you know, a bigger, more distinct, robust piece of the onion in there, then you can leave these pieces bigger. So a lot of times in, you know, some noodle dishes, say pad thai, you might have bigger pieces, so they might be, you know, inch-long pieces. So you might slice something like that. And then, you know, there might be smaller parts, or, you know, they might even keep some of the white bigger and cooked in, but you would cook the white part longer. I'll show you a couple other ways to slice this. So if your onion is, you know, maybe bigger and thicker than some of these skinnier, more narrow scallions, then just so that you don't get a big piece in whatever you're having, you might cut them in half lengthwise first. So let me show you that, just taking the roots off. So cut off the green, I'll slice that separately. But if this was, you know, bigger rounds, you just don't want a big piece of onion, you can just cut down lengthwise so that it's in half. If you want to mince it up, you could also just cut in lengthwise again to quarter it. And then, similar to what we did with the chilies, you just want to mince it up, you can just curl fingers and make pretty quick work of mincing up that scallion. That, all right. All right, so the other thing that you can do is you can make little designs, which are kind of fun. All right. So if you want to just make a little decoration for the top of one of your dishes, you can actually, and this is better with your paring knife if you have one. And I'm just going to, you know, work closely and try and, instead of quartering it, do even more slits. So I'm doing basically what I just did before I minced, but leaving it intact and making some slices. But, you know, maybe I'll do 4 of them instead of 2. So we'll end up with 8. And you can, you know, get in there and be even more careful. The, you know, more of these you make, the more it will bloom out. You can put that in some ice water and it will turn into a flower. Let me do a couple of them. You can also just do just the white part with this. Okay, so So if you want it to really bloom out, you can even do smaller cuts, so not as long. You can just go around and do that in a circle. Just want to make sure you don't cut across where you cut before, otherwise you'll start losing pieces. Okay. So there's one more spot I can cut. All right, so you can see there that there's a lot of little pieces there, and they'll start to blossom out when you put them in cold water. So let that sit for just a couple minutes and I'll show you what it looks like. So here we have our small whole pieces of scallion. Here we have our rounds, and here we have our minced scallion. And then it's just been in here a couple of minutes. I would encourage you to let it sit longer, but you can see that even just being in the cold water for that little short amount of time, it's all starting to bloom out, and so it will become like a flower. And the skinnier the pieces are that you cut, the more it will roll back and curl back and be a beautiful, nice garnish for your dish.